Hello everyone, it's Friday night and it is time for the Weekender once more, and on this week's show we have a ton of fun checking out some fantastic historicals as we visit the Franco-Prussian War and the 30 Years' War. We also go all retro with the 80s and kick into some hard sci-fi for upcoming Kickstarters. On top of all of that, we also have a prize, the Stuart Ellis board game of dexterity and skill to glory. If you want to be a pirate captain gathering up all the gold, then pop over to OnTableTop.com, pop a comment below this video there, and sit back and relax, because your weekend starts here. Hello everybody and welcome to the Weekender. I'm joined this week by John and Justin. Hello ladies.
We're all good.
How are we?
Oh, we're fine. It's been a while since the three of us been on one for one.
Well, that's because they keep us away, keep us apart. Presumably there's a reason. Maybe we're like Neo and Trinity in the new ship Matrix, where if the two of them are combined, they become Captain Planet or something. I don't know. Nobody really paid attention to that. It was a terrible film. But regardless, we're here now. Well done us.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into this week's show, there's a few bits and pieces that are cropping up, or have cropped up, to let people be aware of, because we're good like that. Right off the bat, the first big one is today is the 21st of June, which means yesterday was the last day of spring. Today's the first day of summer. Happy summer. Enjoy your hay fever. More importantly, the spring clean challenge is finished. Ahaha, ahaha, ahaha. So, if you have been posting a project in our system, doing your spring cleany bits, we'll only take updates up to yesterday / this morning to account for time zones. Anything you do after this, great. Keep doing it. I love seeing projects, especially if they've got battle reports in them. But the actual winners will be picked based on people who have done stuff during spring and not slightly after spring. I've got to be cruel to be kind, although I do actually
You're
really
so mean
enjoy
to them, Gerry.
just being cool. Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. It's the only way they'll learn, because otherwise they'll just go off book completely, and I can't be having that. So yeah, that's one thing to point out. Spring has sprung, and now we're into the downhill cavalcade of summer into autumn into winter. And to be brutally honest, the amount of times my boiler's been on the past week or so, I would be hard pressed to tell you the difference between summer and winter right now here in Nairn, because it's been absolutely Baltic. But who knows? Who knows how that will pan out? Other thing is, if you haven't been paying attention to Firelock's Port Royal Kickstarter, I got a chance to sit down with the lovely Mike, the pair of us puffing away on our pipes like old men. So if you want to hear Mike's cunning plan for all things Port Royal based, and we even get a chance to talk a bit about Summer of Plunder at the end as well from the community, you can pop over to the YouTubes. Mike's got his pipe, mine's hidden, but don't worry, it pops out as well. And yeah, it's interesting seeing just where Mike thought it was going to go and where it's actually got to, because that's been going absolutely great guns, and there's a few weeks left on it, which is absolutely cracking for all concerned, as you may imagine. And this is almost a little bit of bonus news, because I'm generous to a fault. Am I generous? The free RPG day is being run this weekend. So if you have a local game club / store that is participating, or even if you have one that isn't, you can just plow on in there and just start playing games. There's a whole host of stuff kicking around this weekend. So keep an eye online anyway. because even people who aren't actively participating in Free RPG Day often do things for us. It's generally an excuse for companies to throw out little free campaigns, missions, one-shots. Who knows what else you can get from them during it, which is always cracking anyway. And I've got a massive collection from the last couple of years of Free RPG Day. But this year, if you happen to be in the Coleraine area, we're not having Free RPG Day on Free RPG Day because unfortunately we're shut.
Yeah. Well,
but if you come to us,
the store itself is open, but the hall's
closed. Yeah. But I don't care about the store. I can't play games in the store, so we're going to have our Free RPG Day whenever we do our July meetup for games. But yeah, there should be lists about where you can find out whether or not you've got a local store participating, and it is just a case of going down and just filling your boots. Bring a couple of big, hefty, empty bags because they're generally a ton of expansions and one-shot rules and all sorts of things. So if you want to try out Dragonbane for the first time, there's like a rules light version of that. There's Pathfinder and Starfinder all get stuff as well. There'll just be a ton of fun from any of your local game stores. And just, like I say, because I'm so generous, Free League from Wednesday last week to I think the start of July, I've got a load of offers running throughout their fairly comprehensive role-playing system at the moment. So you have to dig around. Not everything is in it. However, they're up to 50% off in places. So in the Vessen area, the core rules are down to half price. Obviously, that's in Swedish krona because I keep everything in Swedish krona in case I just send stuff to my friend in Stockholm. But that does translate into other currencies as well, like euro and sterling. So there's a absolute boatload of stuff up to half price throughout the ranges. And as you can see, they've got quite a few of them. So if you're interested in getting into some role playing, just use this opportunity this weekend to have a hunt around, see what companies are up to, see what you can get for cheap/free, because free stuff is best. It's the best price point you can find anywhere. And it's always worth seeing what's out there. Just fill your boots, tell your friends, roll some dice, make up some characters. It's all great. You still doing your D&Ds yourselves then, guys? Because I know you were big into it for a long time.
Yeah, but our main campaign just re-kicked off. John missed the first session. And it's a real shame because our DM decided to murder one of the longest standing NPCs in the campaign.
I was
that
stuck
session.
on a boat.
Nice.
In a storm, apparently.
Nobody likes to be stuck on a boat in a storm. I'm trying to remember where I was when that happened. I became becalmed for about 6 weeks on what should have been a 2-day crossing. It was horrendous.
All right.
We had to eat people. Well, we didn't have to, but we chose to.
It's all right. My character in the interim went out, got drunk, fell down a sewer, and has spent the last months wandering around murdering rats and kobolds, just trying to stay alive, making jerky.
I would say what my character's been up to, but that hasn't been revealed to the rest of the group yet, so no spoilers for Justin.
Oh, yeah. Best not then. No spoilers. You don't want them getting a head start when you come hunting them through the streets with some sort of wicked blade. Going to be becalmed, you may as well get a cursed blade and off you go. Anyway.
No, it's fun.
Oh, I'm glad it's fun. Otherwise, there wouldn't be much point doing it. That'd be terrible. Just turn around and go, RPGs. That's a load of horseshit. But I do it anyway, because I'm in too deep now. Can't leave. It's the sunk cost fallacy of a long campaign. Right, enough of that. Time to get on with the show proper. And this week, we're going to be kicking things off, as always, with the most important part, the indie of the week. And this week, it's Eagles of Empire, which is an indie we'd visited way back at the start. May actually be one of the very first ones we did. But I've been advised to give them a little tickle, have a look at what they're doing, because they've got plans for this year. Grand plans. So, the delightful Eagles of Empire is a Franco-Prussian skirmish game. Obviously, the Franco-Prussian War, interesting war. It more or less set up the evolution of Germany as a nation and power, and therefore, consequently, would also set up a couple of big wars in the following century. You may remember them as World War I and or II. Discuss. But it uses a bespoke skirmish system. So the interesting thing for me is the actual system that they've created or crafted, if you will. We'll get to the Loire campaign in a moment. But the rules themselves come via the medium of 2 drill books. So book 1, infantry, book 2, everything else. As the man says, anything that's not just slogging around on foot, anybody with a name and a hat gets to go in the other book. But the rules themselves are relatively compressed, relatively simple. But the part and parcel of the system is really creatively done. So obviously with a lot of games you have command and control or some form of fog of war that sort of kicks in. But then list building and points are separate. It's something you do before you come to the table. You work out what you're using for the scenario, whether it's a point off or whether it's a specific order of battle for what you're playing. This has that to a certain extent, but also when you're playing, there's an economy within the game itself. So the system uses objectives to be held on the battlefield that then provide you with currency that you then use to bring in additional reinforcements or buy.
Sort of like your old PC RTS games then. Capture a point to gain.
Yes.
Yeah.
You gain resources and then you choose to spend your resources, and your resources could be, well, I'm holding this point, therefore I'm going to want to bring in more additional reinforcements to help me secure the point or push on to a new one. But they're also used to buy victory points. So you're having to go, do I push for the VPs? Or do I push for the reinforcements, hoping that I'll be able to hold what I've got and therefore use that to push on, get another objective, hold those, and then start generating the victory points? But maybe it means your opponent's getting ahead of you while that's ongoing. And then you can also use them to bring in, I think, name characters and use them for every nation has a tactical doctrine, something that is unique to Denmark, Prussia, France, whoever it happens to be. And that helps them play in the style of the military of the period. So, sudden boost in combat capability via the objective points as well is just absolutely fascinating. That they've sort of combined all of this within a very tight little rule set that's just backed up with a couple of doctrine cards or the actual minutia of the rule system itself is sort of carried between these things. I don't want a quick view. I want you to open. Why you no open? Sorry.
A question, Gerry. So
yes.
Are these folks just solely focused on the rule side of things, or are they producing minis as well?
No, they do miniatures as well.
Okay.
But the rules themselves, I think, are an intriguing and unique thing, because obviously these days Perry's also do Franco-Prussian. So, and there's a ton of other companies, Wargames Foundry and the like as well, also have them. So when they're selling things, they're selling them for this game, which means you're probably paying slightly more than if you were just buying the miniatures straight from X, Y, or Z, because they also contain the unit cards and doctrine cards for those units. So anyway, yes.
That makes sense.
But then they also have things like the specific named officers for various things. And recently, the Army of Loire campaign book has come out. I think this came via the medium of Kickstarter, and it's now sort of on its, there you go. It's now available for purchase by the hoi polloi who didn't get involved in the Kickstarter. I do like how the system itself is very focused on the historical accuracy of the period. So in this case, the Army of Loire campaign is, I think, 12 linked scenarios. Yeah, 12 historical scenarios that follows the chronological campaign. And it's very nicely presented as well.
It looks like it has a lovely art style too.
I really like it's one of these ones where I'm looking at it going, I'd really like to pick them up to see them. But I don't want to buy into Franco-Prussian War because I don't have enough time for what I am doing. But
how big potentially are the forces involved? Like miniature count and stuff?
They're very small, John. Oh God, they're small. I mean, when you get right down to it, I could probably get away with a couple of armies because it's small scale skirmish. It's not full.
It's not rank and file
on mass
as such.
Yeah.
So if this is something you want to dip your toe into, this will be a good choice because you're not going to overload yourself, maybe.
That's kind of what I was thinking, because I've kind of wanted to get into that period of warfare anyway, but the likes of the Napoleonic Wars and stuff like that just feel like the big rank and file games feel like a massive investment to me as someone coming into it. But this, with that kind of classic real-time strategy kind of feel to it, it has a certain appeal to me. I'm looking at it. Plus, I like the Franco-Prussian War because, as you say, like it sets up what becomes Germany, and then what the First World War solidifies as Germany, as the German Empire or whatever, and then just the history goes where it goes after that. So,
things happened.
Yeah, it's an interesting blending of the period. I mean, it occurs around the same time that the American Civil War is kicking off, so the weaponry is the same, although obviously they're still mostly rocking the spanking semi-Napoleonic-esque uniforms and looking very fashionable. These are the Danes, but there's a prime example. So a box set for the Danes is 16 figures for 26.
That is really reasonable.
That's not horrible.
And
then how much of your army would that build out for you?
A third, maybe. I'm looking at the lists and stuff. They're looking sort of 30-ish figures, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. Then some of it will come down to the scenario you're playing as well. But that's
so basically you could get a starter force for under the ton.
You could get playing for under the ton, pretty much.
Well, if I get the Call to Arms starter, it is £1 less than 100. You're going to do this thing where you're not going to open for me again, aren't you? Because you hate me. Why does Quick View exist? Huh? Why is this even a thing?
I have to shout at someone for their web development for that.
I'm saying nothing. But there's a prime example. So 4 boxes.
And the book.
So starter set, 2 box French, 2 box of Prussian. So 64 miniatures, so about 30 aside. And then the 40-page rule book. So the drill one, the infantry book, to get you started off with it. Which is altogether
for a starting point, it's not bad.
You even get a little Prussian
for a starter point on a new historical era that you're not fully wanting to engage in. I know. You're gonna but
I could do that.
I mean, Halloween's coming, Gerry.
Like there's not. I know there's a few skirmish games out for this sort of period anyway, but nothing has really jumped out at me as being, yes, pick me up and play. This I think Justin might be in the same boat as me. That whole, it has that Dawn of War feel, that Dawn of War / old RTS kind of feel to it.
Yeah, but compared to other ones that I've seen, this feels really cohesive for getting you started. Everything you need is there in one shot. Diving into new historical areas where you're unsure of the actual history can be really daunting if you haven't had the time to actually go, okay, I need to do all my research before I buy my minis.
Down to painting 150 French, for a rank and file game that I may not even enjoy the first time I take it out, But that's partly me. That's me not researching before I buy stuff.
Well, it's certainly one way to go with it, to be fair. The nice thing is there are a dose of videos running through. There's a couple of flick-throughs of the books done by Eagles of Empire on YouTube, where he flicks through book 1 and book 2 individually. So they're about 20 minutes long and roughly goes through, here's this bit, and this is how this works, and here's this bit, and this is how this works. So gives you a good overview of the sort of mechanics without actually running through it. And then there's some Let's Plays with apparently some more due as well in the not too distant future. And I think there's a plan for another campaign later on this year, Beyond the Wire. So there's Mayor von Halden. I will say the figures themselves are absolutely gorgeous.
I'm enjoying this one here.
Are we talking metal, resin, plastic?
Yes, metal, like God intended.
Okay. Again, I don't mind that being small skirmish. I obviously would prefer plastic, but I mean, I know.
I don't know. Metal has a nice feel to it when you're playing with it on the table. I like the half of metal in some
because you haven't varnished it properly, then you have to start repainting things. That is a
that's a me problem.
That's an interesting one there. If I get this to open, will you open for me? Who knows? No, that's not the one I wanted. The basing itself is ones, twos, and threes, essentially. So I think it's one of those ones where you see some people doing it on occasion for figure removal. You can swap in, swap out. I just like somebody's just baked it in right at the start going, we know you all do this, so why not just go the whole hog and just get your bases as per, and then that's, a squad or a section or whatever it happens to be, bunked up in several sort of constitute parts. So I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, I could be tempted into that because that box set there, that starter deal, like it gets you 2 forces and you haven't spent a lot of money, and it gets you the rules.
Yeah. And again, if you're splitting it with a mate, that makes it.
I mean, the thing is, in here,
getting into.
I wouldn't split it with someone because I'd rather have both the forces rather than bring them up together.
I know they're done.
That's fair.
Rather than say wait for Shay to paint something.
It's a good way of doing it. Yeah.
Not going to happen, is it?
That's just throwing Shay onto the throwing
He's
Shay
not here
right
to
onto
defend
that
himself,
boss job. That is the best.
Is that ACW coming?
Absolutely the best way to do it. I
heard he painted
some
but he hasn't finished anything.
Hopefully. No.
All I need to get is some out, because we've got some of the community coming in later in the year to play a weekend's worth.
Yeah, but they're bringing stuff with
them.
No,
you just don't tell them they're doing that. You tell them we're relying on you to make sure that stuff's done.
Put the pressure on.
It's definitely a way to do it, I suppose. As you can see, the Prussian and French armies are comprehensive. So your Turcos, your line infantry, Zouaves, various style of cavalry as well, from cuirassiers to hussars, and all the artillery that's fit to print. So you really don't have to go anywhere else, which is great.
You can kind of shop elsewhere for perhaps alternative posing or alternative sculpts.
Well, here's a question. Because you have like little stat cards and stuff, do they do those as like a faction deck?
I think we've seen them, yeah.
There are Yeah, there are decks in there. But I mean, getting your hands on some little Frenchy skirmishers just looks spot on.
They do look delightful.
Yeah, they're lovely. Look at that poor bugger lying in the snow. He's going to get piles. Or frostbite. Or frostbitten piles. Oh, feel bad for him.
Gerry, why?
At least after a while, I wouldn't be able to feel them.
That's true. Don't know if that's a comfort or not.
You are literally freezing your ass off there.
At least it wouldn't hurt when you said
it. Go. Little officer with the French infantry doctrine. And there's a prime example of the command point spend that you need from generating from your resources. So you can go up in various grades.
It is an interesting aspect of having an evolving force on the table instead of it just being, I've brought my army, I've worked it out, I've set it down. Being able to tweak and twist mid-game is something
I think that's what I was
kind
of aiming at, the whole, stuff changes as you gain points.
The RTS-ness,
Right. And depending on how the battle's going, you can leverage your force in different ways.
This could be my way in. I mean, it's the prices alone set the bar in that point where it's not huge to get into. That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. So cards by themselves are $350 per regiment, essentially. So
fair.
If you're not picking up the actual miniatures from here, then or if you've already got miniatures, then you can sling them in that way.
Yeah.
What's that? Full deck for infantry is $950.
That's not bad.
Don't know if that's just those 3 or 4 units, or if it's the whole.
Well, if you're only running 3 to 4 different types of unit per side, yeah,
but there's an awful lot of different infantry types there. So, that, considering the individuals are $350 a touch, I don't know if that's all. Anyway, I digress. People can find that out for themselves if they hook around long enough, I'm sure. So yeah, French and Prussians, really nice. Even a touch of the Austrian, if you want to branch out. So I'd like the fact that they've sort of skirted the extremes. So you've got the Danes for the Celtic, prior to the Franco-Prussian, and then the Austrian-Prussian War as well. So again, same sort of thing. A small amount of figures is all you really need. And when you're playing a niche game or niche period with a game like this, it means not having to go hunting is always good. So not having to find out who does Austrian, Hungarian line infantry or your Austro-Hungarian artillery and Jaegers and so on and so forth. You can just grab them one and done from here. You too can upgrade your veteran. Don't upgrade your artillery to veteran. They'll just get lost in the mountains somewhere. Then you'll rue the points and the objectives that you've lost. Apart from that, on the website, there's also, as you can see, some interesting bits and pieces for putting your armies together. I do like the fact that color plates are in the rules, because that just makes life so much easier to get your hands on. So if you are planning on having a nosy, you're not going to open these, are you? No. Oh, you opened that way. Ah, there we go. You two can see some of the figures up closer, which is nice.
They do look like they'll paint up really easily.
Oh God, yeah. Trying to think. Oh, it was Napoleonic Prussians that you front ranked.
That's right. Yeah,
40k, wasn't it, John?
They were. Wargames Foundry, I want to say they were, with a bit of Perry stuff mixed in. They're over there, and I'm looking at them. But I kind of want to do the historical ones now.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a bad day.
Well, that's what happens whenever you go running around
just
carrying
a flag,
standard.
mate.
Somebody's going to come and stab you up. Flags.
Even back then, they were worried about the flags.
It's some cannon.
Yeah. I think
you could build some interesting gaming tables for this as well.
Well, if you build them for Napoleonics, you can just keep running right over the top then. Multi-period, you can get all the way up to World War II with them. As long as you don't cannon the ever-living bejesus out of them too much. Welcome to the 19th century. They scream as they attack you. But yeah, the Eagles of Empire rule sets and miniatures, I think, for the Franco-Prussian, definitely worth taking a look at. Also, keep the eye out on the old YouTube channel to see those Let's Plays, the book flip-throughs, and to also see what else is coming, because I've been assured there are more Let's Plays on the way if you want to see exactly how the game sort of develops and progresses. I think it's definitely one to keep an eye on. Right. Let's have a look at some news.
Coming to you from the center of Northwestern Europe. Covering board games, war games, card games, and all that you love. It's the news.
Okay, we're kicking things off for the news with some science fiction. In fact, the first two stories are both science fiction and technically separate, but at the same time also technically connected. You'll see what I mean when we get into it. First things first is Westfalia Miniatures have shared some previews of an upcoming science fiction set of miniatures that Boris has been working on in the background for some time now. Now, everybody knows Boris's work in fantasy. I've got boxes of them everywhere. That's the most recent one that's arrived, which is the Teutonic Knights. These, however, are something more weird and wacky. Esoteric.
Am I seeing some form of gunhead lizard?
Nope, you're seeing some sort of gunhead android/cyborg.
Okie doke.
The Borg have evolved.
So this is a range called the Dark Object. This is not the entire upcoming Kickstarter campaign, which will be coming in July. But this is a very good demonstration of what sort of things you can expect to see in it. So humans, great. Androids, possibly less great. Cyborgs, who knows? Aliens, terrible. Absolutely god-awful. Nobody likes them at all.
I mean, I feel bad for this guy if he ever sneezes.
I wouldn't feel bad for him. I'd feel bad for everybody in this area, though.
Fair.
But they are absolutely screaming insanity from Boris once again. The hazmat suit, I think, is an absolute adorable.
That's a very dystopian kind of suit. That is just sort of here. We made it as cheap as possible. It totally works.
I was about to say it looks a little bit Soviet. You know, it's the old thing of, you know, NASA spent how much to make a pen that would work in space. I even brought a pencil.
Yeah. But as you can see, the characters themselves, great. I particularly like Mr. Howard Philip Lovecraft here as some sort of weird doctor/engineer with big baggy pants creeping around the place. Whatever he's touching, don't touch it. Stay away from it, and then possibly set him on fire. Yeah. That's how you deal with any of the Cthulhu things. This engineer here, there's a bigger picture of him. He is possibly my favorite figure in the whole thing. Although everybody else likes
female soldier there is looking quite tasty.
Yep, definitely not 100% not Cara Dune from the Baby Yoda show, Series 1. Not her. Kind of is her. But definitely not her. So some of these will come with alternative heads or helmets. Most are as you see them, so sort of a one and done. But the Dark Object is interesting in that it's really pushing the industrial horror, the aliens style dystopian kind of thing going on. These people have seen some stuff. That guy in particular, with the RPG, has really seen some stuff.
He has had enough of today.
But again, I really like the outfits just for the weirdness of them. The sort of
the aesthetic is just that little bit offbeat. That works really well.
Which is generally Boris's default. He lives in the offbeat. It's where he likes to live life so much. There is, I believe he's called Pope. He's an engineer. He's an engineer with a massive gun. He's also just so delightfully grumpy, smoking a tab as well. And it has that real sort of alien space truckers aesthetic kicking around on these guys.
I look at this and it's like, you know, those questions you get in school. It's like, and where do you see yourself in 10 years, John? Grumpy. I can already do that if I want.
Out on a solo deep space mining mission.
I just need that one part for my Miata, and I swear to God, if any aliens get in my way.
Nice.
John just floating out there out past Io.
So, the human side of things, which also includes the scavengers, cyborgs, are up against a whole host of aliens. Mostly aliens? But these guys, I mean, there's a certain doom feel to some of it as well. It has to be said. So your aliens may not always be aliens. They may just be grumpy little bags of pus.
I love the little guy on the right. He's just like, how did I get here?
I think somebody sat on him. But yeah, it's that sort of kitsch industrial horror slasher feel, I suppose, to things. There are a whole host, pardon the pun, of other aliens coming, which look slightly more alien meets machine than these, who are more distinctly Doom-esque demons. And this is all bundled together with a couple of other bits and pieces. There is going to be some 3D print files, specifically of rooms and corridors, so you can put together your own little spaceship to creep around in and be all space hulky while trying to explode demon-faced aliens with your shotgun. And there's also a rule set that Dan Mersey wrote for Westfalia before, which is called Strongsword. It's been adapted for the Dark Object, which means if you don't have a rule set you're already thinking of that you could use them in, then there'll be a fairly narrative-driven, rules-light set of rules for you to start slogging around the board with. And I'm fascinated to see how they go, because I do have Strong Sword somewhere around here. That's a different one. So I have them from Westphalia's previous campaign many months ago, where they brought them in for the halflings and kobolds, and it was really fun, just chucking a load of things down, because there was a certain amount of choices when you were activating. You're kind of activating to do a specific thing, like I'm going to be a defensive or offensive, and then depending on the type of activation you wanted to go for, you were allowed a certain amount of actions in a direction, if you will. So it's not just a standard, you've got 2 action points and you can move or fire twice. You've got to kind of think of how you're going to sweep and clear a room, I suppose, is probably a better way of thinking of it. So you've got choices to make when you come in there. Don't know how it's actually going to be migrated into the sci-fi world, but it'll be fascinating to see how it goes, because I'm a big fan of Dan's rule set anyway, because he always writes some nice, interesting rules, and coupling that with Boris's absolute whimsy. Let's go with whimsy. There, you haven't seen the aliens. I mean, the aliens are, well, you've seen some of them, but the rest of them are, isn't it? But they have a almost a command and control structure sort of in there. It's like these aliens are weird, creepy, float around with a head full of additional mechanical dendrites and things probed into them. And they stay at the back of the battlefield and command things. These aliens are the size of a horse and like to bite people's faces off. You're going, okay, grand, thanks. And this one's a massive troll-looking thing and is really cute. Oh, this is all delightful, Boris.
I wonder if when Boris is figuring out his sculpt, does he have like a tombola beside him that's just full of random ideas, and he just picks one out and goes, "This
I've seen.
My thinking was it might have been something a little more harsh, like a bowl of random drugs. Oh, look,
I think it's a tombolo with like animals, setting, level of horror, and he just keeps going till he's picked 3 or 4 keywords that he goes, yes, I'll sculpt that.
Yeah. It's weird because we've asked Boris for a long time now, and by we I mean general community who follow Boris's work, for a sketchbook or art book based on his sketches, because he does this thing where he will take a picture of something like an old chair, a leather chair that's all worn and folded in, and then we'll turn that into a demon, or coffee spills on a page, and then he'll use the coffee spills to I know there's a word for pattern recognition and seeing
a blot test
patterns within things. It's that type of thing. So he has
must have an interesting day when he stares at clouds.
Sketchbook is just filled with weird things like that. These I'm really fascinated by because they're so human up until the point where you get him, and he's not the only one. There's a one that's wearing a human skull as a head as well, which is even creepier. But yeah, the whole idea of having these very
kind of restrained in a way.
Beside the great word, restrained, very characterful, but noticeably just standard human form. And then you put them up against some of Boris's demons and aliens, which just, they're not your Doctor Who man in a rubber suit. There's no, bipedal look to most of them. They just have such a weird aesthetic to them that they just stand out so much.
I will say the big one in that photo looks like it's giving a pep talk to the little one in front of it because it looks so sad. She's like, it's okay. One day you'll grow up and bite somebody's face off. It'll be fine.
Yeah. I have a beholder somewhere that I'm painting up for Kings of War. I actually have 3 of them that Boris made, and it's you take a beholder and then you took the coronavirus and you put them together. So you know the way the coronavirus has a ball with all these little spikes coming out of it. So that's it. It's the corona beholder. I'm going, well, that's just amazing. I want 3 of those for reasons. I want 3 of those for my Night Stalker list, to be brutally honest, in Kings of War. So I did. I just got 3 of them. But yeah, really like what Boris is doing. Obviously, Westfalia do some terrific stuff. So it's nice to see more coming from them. It's June, July, as is this from the next story, which is tangentially attached.
Yeah.
Can I say that? Yeah, I can. To Westfalia. So the people who do their casting now for the last couple of years, couple of years, since COVID at least, is Wyrmforge in the US. And for a long time, they've just been doing actual casting for other people. So they've been making mold making, casting metal, casting resin, doing 3D prints, doing all the technical side. But then they picked up some of the Westfalia ranges that they weren't able to support any longer, or weren't fitting the catalog that Westfalia had. So the halflings and the one gold piece STLs sort of went to the guys at Wyrmforge, and that was their first miniature line, essentially a bought IP from somebody else. But then last year, or earlier this year, they ran a little Kickstarter for a few figures that they'd sculpted themselves, and then this one is on its way, which is again sci-fi based, a little more 70s retro sci-fi than out and out sort of industrial horror. These would fit very neatly into the likes of a Stargrave or 7TV, that sort of thing. And you've got a range of humans, fairly certain he's a bot, a big red glowy eye. I don't think so, Dave. And aliens, the tiny little Ben going to his allotment, looking to weed out
no. Clearly, that's the main character of this entire show.
But I like this. It's a simple set of 9 sculpts, mostly unarmed civilians, the exceptions being presumably the police on Delta Station. One is our little red-eyed robot, though can't tell. I mean, they look... Oh, no, it's not. I was going to say it looked like human legs, but now I'm seeing it actually looks like little robot legs that finish, and he's wearing a pair of like sandals to give him a defined human footprint rather than just boxy robot feet. Anyway, the rest of them are just a mix of spacers, truckers, mechanics, and scumbags. This poor fella here, he reminds me of the one who was doing percussive maintenance in the Armageddon film.
Yes.
And he has that
Russian hero.
Yeah, he has that sort of
that
1970s. Well, the 1970s equipment feel of something like a Alien, a 2001, where they're going, well, we've got our hands on some 1950s or 60s flight suits for high altitude, and then that will become our default spacefaring costume. But I love the designs for these as a set. They're really distinctive and have that. They're not they're not ray gun retro. They just have that little niche of here are the 70s and they were great. Although to be fair, he's one step away from gorting and stopping the whole world. So
see, they're all carrying a lunchbox with them.
Well, yeah, you have to, because that's where your oxygen is stored. Got to keep your oxygen in a case, and every so often you can open it and sniff and close it again.
Yeah,
because nobody wants to run out of puff. We'll say all of these have been painted by a guy called Lasagnian, which is a bit like an onion, but with a Z at the start.
Well, is it like a lasagna onion?
I don't know where you got that association from at all.
Sound like lasagna to me, or I'm just hungry.
Yeah. Could be that.
This one feels very 70s. That's like, how do we make a set of orange overalls look more sci-fi? I know, we put elastic bands down the legs. Yep, we puff
all
it
the way
up
down
with
the
like
legs,
bin bags and stuff inside it to make it sound and look more. Yeah, of course.
I was thinking bin bags as well. Yeah,
make it look like someone with the great bomber jacket leggings.
And then this fella here, he's just knocked off. He's having a smoke. That's what he's doing.
Clearly, our main villain looks so suspicious.
That is saying stop resisting. It is reaching.
That is law and order. If you're not doing anything wrong, you'll be fine.
Yeah. He was instructed at the academy by ED 209. You've got 30 seconds to comply. Blam, blam, blam.
According to Asimov's laws, the best way to keep you safe is to not have you alive.
Yes. That is one way to do it. But yeah, interesting little set of 9 figures. And maybe it's because I've been looking at some crooked dice stuff. We'll take a look at some of that later on as well. But I've really just got a fascination / interest with classic / retro movies at the moment. So your 70s, your 80s TV and movies, when everything was much better. And I just want to...
the old Lost in Space and stuff like that.
Yeah. Just want an excuse to stick some of these on my painting table and then ignore them until they get swallowed up by
until you remind us on an XLBS 2 years from now. Like, oh yeah, do you remember I got them?
Yeah, got those.
I finally primed them.
Yeah. These are going to be a set that's resin cast from Wyrm, and that and the Dark Object from Westfalia are both due in July time, but the links are going to be in the show notes below for people to go and have a click on it. You can sign up to be notified. Isn't that what they do on the old campaigns? So you won't miss out whenever they launch. Although you won't miss out when they launch, because if I'm around, I'll be telling you. in no uncertain terms that they are 100% there for you to just go and have a nosy at. Because I'm very good like that. I'm a generous person, generous to a fault. Right. Another quick bit of news about historics, actually, and about something we talked about earlier, Napoleonic Wars. It was on Wednesday, the 209th anniversary of Waterloo, for those playing along at home. And Warlord remembered that they don't just do heroic 10 mil. They went, hang on a minute, we do other, don't we? Yes, we do. We do 28. And so to that end, they actually released some French cavalry commanders from Waterloo. So if you are a 28 mil fan, then you could get your hands on some lovely Frenchies to lead your cavalry into a god-awful charge with Ney where you lose half of your men. I think that's more or less how that one went. So there's 3 named cavalry commanders. You have Kellerman, Milord, Lefebvre, Desnay, and then just a general, cuirassier general. But they're spanking figures. If you're
the level of fancy in the uniforms is just so over the top for this time period.
It's
not over the top for this time period.
Yeah.
Nailed on for this. Yes. Everybody wants to be a hussar. They had all the fanciest kit. If you want the Lloyd shots, there are Lloyd shots as well. Look at that.
You bear in mind that a lot of your generals at the time, Justin, were your aristocracy. So like they were fancy as all hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not on the French side though. Because they took all the aristocracy and cut their heads off.
Yeah.
But the hussars, everybody wants to be a hussar. Where else would you get a nice leopard skin shabrack? And then the not at all jarring red, white, green, yellow puce outfit that the hussars would wear. I say the hussars, obviously there was quite a few different regiments and they all seem to want to outdo each other in absolute vomit-inducing colour selection. It's all good in the hood.
Maybe their uniform designer was colorblind.
I think
didn't want to admit it.
Psychological warfare. I think it's if we ride enough of these guys past someone fast enough, they will eventually have a seizure.
It's definitely one way of doing it. But yeah, so just thought I'd throw that one out. Weirdly, it was the only thing they did. I thought with Waterloo coming, they might have done a couple more releases to go coincide with it. But these are all sort of slated for the 100 Days campaign. So if you do play that in the likes of your Black Powder or, well, anything else except in the Grand Manor, because I really can't stand that rule set. Don't play that. It's a horrible rule set. It hurts my head. Play Shaco. That's better. Anyway, if you're after some French cavalry commanders, then you can always pick those up from Walad, which is the correct way to say it. Right. Up next, let's dive back into the 80s. So Crooked Dice have a new wave of their 80s inspired miniatures for 7TV. This comes off the back of a new genre guide that came out in April. As you can see, there are some very distinctive looking figures in here. Yeah. So if we have a look through, obviously we've seen these a few weeks ago. Well, not these, but part of wave 1, of which there was many. Here we can see a Claw, an alien android with his tiny little nubbly.
Yes, belly brain.
Right. Could be that, certainly. It's not what I was thinking of. Neutron Nelson, because at some point somebody's decided Prince needed a ray gun. That's the Mormons for you. They'll come after you. Xenos Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
The Immortal Swordsman, who really needs a bunch of headless corpses to be strewn around the area. Just saying.
Possibly.
There's no possibly about it. It can be only one. The Deadite Hunter. Good old Chainsaw Maniac. A Lost Boy. And last but not least, the Cybernetic Organism. Now, these all come off the back of the 1980s Genre Guide, which is a supplement for 7TV. It's a whopping supplement. It's 200 pages worth of supplement. Or if you choose not to go down the route of a book, you can pick up all the decks of cards that are contained there in that supplement. But for people who maybe have heard us talk about 7TV but haven't really explored what it is, apart from a magnificent miniatures range that is also backed up by a interesting set of rules where you are pitting antagonists and protagonists against each other, sometimes with little neutral standbys, allies, or TV fodder, I suppose. So you tell a selection of scenes or shows on the tabletop, and you're sort of back and forthing between them with event cards and things like that, where it plays like a regular skirmish game, but it has the added benefit of being able to sort of craft your own TV sets and narratives. Oh, voice went there. Craft your own TV sets and narratives to go with. So if you are doing something like getting your Nam vet in there for some jungle fighting action, that's equally as doable as pitting two men in giant rubber suits against each other and destroying some tiny model village of, Tokyo or whatever it happens to be. So you can really go wild when it comes to building your actual tabletops, because you don't have to think about just representing standard 28mm scale boards. You can, essentially be going, well, what if they were actually fighting out some sort of kaiju-like King Kong fight on this, and have little areas that have got, 2mm or 6mm buildings on it, which would make perfect sense for scale model stuff. So the new set of rules, the new set of themes, the genre guide, gives you somewhere in the region of like 147 new character types, along with new themes and MacGuffins that you can use to craft your narrative and push your story along with. As you can see, things like the demonic box or the interesting mirrored shades, in case you fancy going all conform, consume, obey, are doable 100%. So you fight your way across your TV show sets or your movie sets, and every man jack of them has a very distinctive feel. Obviously, this 80s one is just absolutely the best because it's so infinitely quotable. Like I Am Your Father from that star-based thing, Star Trek, the motion picture. That the 80s? No, it was the 70s. Nobody puts baby in the corner. All of them have these little cracking quotes and sort of homages to a specific TV show, actor, or personality. So these are the new types of film or TV shows you can make. As you can see, Cold War, Frightmare, Greed and Glamour, Hired Help.
Next year we'll be millionaires.
That's it. The Rebel State and Silicon Dreams. So if you want to play your RoboCop, your Blade Runner, your Tron, these are all very viable, but at the same time, you can also have Leatherface chasing a bunch of teenagers through a house festooned with the trophies, shall we say, of previous...
Or trying to take chandeliers out of a mansion.
Try and take chandeliers out of a mansion. Because it doesn't have to be as confrontationally adversarial as a game would be. If it was a straight skirmish game or military game, you know, you can do whatever you come up with, really. It might just be trying to work out how you're going to get one over on Boise all the time. Marlene.
No worries, Dave.
So you can see here some of the sort of the tropes with the Silicon Dream, all about dropping into an 8-bit wonderland, and the cameo deck for the background extras that may pop in and could be for you or against you. In this case, things like the Electron Hunters and Guards, the Video Ghost, they're all Tronisms. So even though they are very heavily themed to specific people, like everybody's favorite Immortal after Sean Connery, the Highlander there, you don't necessarily have to go, I'm just going to replay Highlander. You can come up with your entire own narrative. There's a great webcomic out there called Darths and Droids, which has been going for well over a decade now. And the whole premise of that is he is telling the story of his RPG group, playing through his sci-fi version of D&D. In his world, Star Wars does not exist, but he uses stills from Star Wars to illustrate his comic. So you get, you know, cheddar monks, not Jedi Knights, things like that. So you can go off on one. You can go, well, here's what the model is, and then maybe my premise is going to be slightly different. So in this case, you may end up with Prince going full Purple Rain on a Terminator because somebody needs to deal with them. And if it's going to be the little lad with the Cuban heels, then so be it. But these are an absolutely beautiful range of miniatures.
I do like the idea of doing like mashups from some of the great bad movies from the 80s.
Oh, there were no bad movies.
What do you mean bad?
They're good bad movies.
Like Welcome to Frogtown. That's a possibly a good bad movie. Look at that. Lost Boys. Never grow up, Michael. So yes, interesting to see more from the guys at Crooked Dice. I'm fascinated to get 7TV on the table. We have the genre guide to have a look at. So I'm looking forward to actually doing something with it because they've even snuck in a few non-80s characters by medium of 11 and Demigorgon, and then the kids from Stranger Things. So even though they're modern day, they're technically 80s because it's all retro. So they went, yep, they're going in our 80s.
Makes all set in the 80s, that's fine.
Push it in there. And I mean, at some point, I really want Michael and the Lost Boys to be chasing them. See how good you are now, lads. Maybe get the Frog Brothers in with the Goonies. Do double dipping job there and see exactly who can deal with who. But yeah, so Crooked Dice, a whole slew of 80s exceptionalism. I've also noticed that recently they started doing STLs as well. So I may have to look at them at some point in the future for your 3D printing things. Because there's some interesting bits and bobs that they have within that, including, I think, all of the Doctors now and a good chunk of their companions, going right back to Hartnell. In fact, I think they crossed the entire span now. I think they have the most current Doctor, which would, of course, be Paul McGann. It's the last one I recognise. Sylvester McCoy into Paul McGann. Let me stop. Don't want Bernie Eccleston anywhere near my Doctor. This dodgy leather jacket. He's not right. He's not right. Right. Just saying he's not. Anyway, sticking with Touch of the Sci-Fi. This one's for you, John, because I'm beneficent. Full Spectrum Dominance. The tiny little 8mm game. He has decided to bestow upon me the gift of teas. So Jack sent me some images of a upcoming faction. They've already added Union that we looked at a while ago, the big industrial looking stuff.
Currently my favorite.
This is the very, very start of a new faction called the Reclaimed. And they're an interesting bunch. I'll preface this with they're made in factory cities from reclaimed bits of bot and concrete pipes.
Okay, this is some form of Junktown journeyman?
Yes, very much so. So these are Cyclops, called that because they have one massive giant lensy eye, which is nice, but also it has to be some form of abbreviation or acronym, because when he said it to me, everything was capitalized in Cyclop. So I tried to find out what that stands for. People can try and guess what it is at home, drop it in below, and I'll tell you whether or not you were right. Spoilers, you will not be right. But he's described these to me as the frontline troop. They're sort of a ubiquitous jack of all trades, mechanical stompy bot, and therefore, like a space marine, you just give it different tools to do different jobs. So you can have them for assaulting, you can have them for fire support, you can have them for sort of main line. Here we have one with a lovely minigun. And he's also started doing some test prints as well. And you can see there.
Oh, they look nice.
Just how adorable they are with their lovely, I mean, they are made of shit pipes.
I mean, you can't have everything.
No, and I hope they washed them thoroughly before inserting the bot in there.
No, they probably didn't.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. But these...
I mean, so long as it's not the case of, the flow chart of does it move? No. Shoot it? Yes. WD-40.
It's fun that they're a fair bit bigger than most of the other infantry. Like if he says these are the basic troops, like they're a lot larger.
Yeah. So I think they're probably going to be twice the size of a human / infantry robot from some of the other factions. And maybe that's because they're having to make do with the crap they've got. And if all they have for armor is some sort of massive ceramic / concrete tube, then you've got to upscale, I suppose.
That's going to be a cool little painting project, doing the concrete and the sort of mechanical parts.
You could do some weathering and maybe even some like shattered graffiti parts, which could look cool.
Oh, I mean, how small a brush am I going to need for that?
I don't know. That's a you problem.
Yeah, it is a me problem. I like these.
They're very, very cool. I'm digging them.
Do I have some there? I was going to say, somewhere I've got transfers of graffiti. Just get those. They're bound to do them in smaller scales. So this is anti-infantry, i.e.
flamer weapon.
Yep. Yeah. And Jack got the original concept was done by a, as he put it, super prolific mecha artist. I'm not going to remember his name, so I'm going to go here to find out. Ratapoom? No? I don't know.
No.
Ratapoom. Anyway, he did the initial concept, and then Jack came back in afterwards and went, now I've just got to make it a bit more grimy, dirty, battered, and add the mechanical parts.
Yep.
So, hence, lumps knocked out of it. I mean, the shooties are nice, because we all like a bit of ranged, even if it just happens to be at the end of a template to absolutely butcher somebody with. But my real favorites are the melee-based options. I say that with a fair amount of quote-quote, because they don't really seem to have melee. They just seem to get up close and punch people in the face with gun barrels.
Which works.
I'm okay with this.
Yep. But look at those. They are sweet.
Yeah, I'm
sweet to the beat.
Very taken by that design.
Yeah.
Don't have any test prints of these, though.
I'm enjoying just how much, difference there is in all the little gribbly damaged bits.
Well, I mean, this is the best thing about doing a faction based on STL is that you can just really quickly iterate different stuff. You can change that patterning up pretty quick. So, like, usually we can get 4 or 5 sculpts out of a plastic model kit, but, in this, you technically could get as many as you feel like, or as many as you have time to do.
These, because I thought they were punchy fists at the start. But then I realized that they all have some massive underslung gun / grenade launcher / petard mortar.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there.
Gun lobber.
But I love it. Mm-hmm. So these, as far as we're kind of melee, or at least we're close assault.
Riot, please.
Yeah. Because, that looks like one of those massive air-driven staple guns. Where you just find your head stapled to a wall. Which is a great way of doing things. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see where these go. Also, did you need to do that on a 8 to 10 mil model, Jack?
Yes.
Did you need to have the fingers and all in there?
Yes, he did.
Well, we know he did. But
the more I'm looking at these, the more I'm wondering what would it look like if you painted them like in super bright primary colors, like kids' toy blocks. So red, blue, yellow, green.
I was kind of thinking of going down the Caterpillar bulldozer kind of way, like yellows with that
yellow
concrete, like the bots underneath are all yellow and hazard striped, but the armor is all concrete.
Maybe it'll be interesting to see what people do with it.
I want to see what the big stuff's going to be for this faction.
Yes, because the stuff he's done for the Corpos and the Union was absolutely mind-blowing. They're just so good.
Yep.
And these are taking a very different, they're not high tech. They're not even industrial low tech. Yep. These are concrete ship pipes filled with bot parts.
Yep.
Can't get much scrappier and make do and mend kind of style than that. So,
because I don't think we've seen anything just as cool looking as since Drops on Commander first was appearing. That sort of really alternative kind of sci-fi.
Yeah, they're so distinctly separate from other sci-fi that's available. It's not just here's our version of the Space Marine, here's our version of Eldar. It's here's just insanity.
Yeah,
here's anime and mecha.
I imagine the vehicles for this, John, just some form of gigantic trash collector. So as it's murdering stuff, it's collecting it to take it back home.
The fact they have said it's factory cities, it may not have massive vehicles,
but it could have a really big bad as being an actual rolling factory, an actual construction plant.
You might get the one-off.
I was just thinking of that little cart that Austin Powers gets stuck in doing the 3-point turn. Just think of those. Just lose them.
Yeah.
Like a whole cavalry wing coming at you at walking pace. Or Zamboni. But yeah. So that's the first little tease of the Reclaimed from the Lazy Forger for Full Spectrum Dominance. Definitely worth checking out his other stuff already. And even Modiphius have started printing his rulebook. So you can get it all via the Lazy Forger anyway, by his My Mini Factory page and tribes and that sort of thing. And like the core rules are going to remain free in perpetuity, but you can go over to Modiphius and get a printed copy if, like me, you refuse to do PDFs. There's nothing good has ever come from a PDF, I'm just saying. Right, we have a final bit of news this week, and it's a touch more of the historic. From 1898, miniatures, although not actually from 1898. It is some 30 Years' War French. Now, these are cute. These are delightfully cute. I love them to bits. A few months ago, so late April, they started showing the previews for the Command Pack and the Pikes, which are now out and available on the website. But here we have some Musketeers, at least one pack of Musketeers. There are 3 coming in July. So if you require some 30 Years' War or English Civil War at a pinch, looking to be a bit of the royalists, then these are a great way of doing it. The packs are going to come with 3 different hat options. So you've got flouncy, armored, and then a variety of caps, wool caps and the like, to make them a bit more hodgepodge. But these are just absolutely spectacular sculpts as always.
Mm-hmm.
And the greens, I mean, the paint job's cracking, but the greens really show up the level of detail they put into them. I mean, it's a strong touch of the Night's Watch painting about it. I mean, I could see any of these being part of Rembrandt's massive masterpiece. And
we're almost at the point now that when you paint a miniature like this, you're actually losing some of the definition.
Yeah, if you're not a decent painter, if you're just slapping on like I do, I then go, I'll get back to that eventually and tidy that up. It's a miracle if paint comes out of the pot. Yeah, they really are so stunningly crisp. I have some of their ECW Pike myself for reasons best known to myself. I was planning on using them in something. I think it was Kings of War, actually. I was going to use them as a mercenary Pike regiment. And now I'm looking at these and going, oh, maybe I could just expand that. Maybe I don't use them for Kings of War because I've not got around to it. I could just drop these in and have a bit of a play around with maybe some light 30 Years War action. Although at that stage you're just looking at it going, well, I may as well just do a whole massed battle game. Just go full ECW. Just wind Ben up. Because he's dying to do it for years.
Yep.
Who knows? Who knows how it will go? But yeah, if you fancy a touch of the French, like I say, several other nations will work for this as well. Then these are absolutely cracking. Really, really nice sculpts. And this is a single pack, so the other 2 packs will also be 6 men in each of those. Due out in July, and there'll be metal figures. If you want to see what the Pike look like, I think I included a picture because I'm awfully nice like that. There we go. There's some of the Pike. So they've been lurking now, unprotected, for like a month and a half. Finally, some shot has arrived to back them up. And hopefully between the pair of them, they'll not get absolutely clattered. But yeah, interesting little set of sculpts. 1898 always do stunningly good, accurate historical sculpts that sort of border on the painter worthy. I'm not sure the best way to put that. They're 28mm, but they look like they should have been sculpted in 54 because the amount of sort of definition and detail on the faces. So yeah, always a fan of those. And if you're a fan of Pike and Shot, you should check them out. If you're not in the EU, Empress Miniatures stocks 1898, so you can get them in the UK via them without having to worry about massive charges on top, thanks to our friend the B word, which we're not allowed to say. Not out loud in case it summons a Tory. Right. That's enough of the news. We'll take a quick switch, and when we come back, we'll be looking at some 3D printing. All right, folks, so we're going to be taking a look at some 3D printing. And since Ben wasn't here and I got to choose, I've picked Bot War.
Of course.
Because he does 3D printing now.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether or not people were aware that Traders Galaxy is now doing the ones and zeros. I will preface this with, it's not just Bot War. There's more to Traders Galaxy than just the giant stompy robots. There's also smaller versions of giant stompy robots attached to men in 28mm, making them giant stompy robots again. It's good. Everything comes full circle.
You're confusing me now.
Yeah. But
it's the circle of Gerry. Just accept it.
Yes. The idea is you find the smallest bot from 10mm, but then you make him into a 28mm character. So he goes from being the small to being big again. Let's go. So he's been running this now for, I think, 3 or 4 months, possibly. It's not been long. There is a tribe attached to it. But with 3rd edition of Bot War just out of pre-order, or rather the pre-order's finished, it's about to start fulfilling. I thought it'd be interesting to see what's lurking around in here. So there's some very early stuff, retro-y, as you can see. There's also some fantasy bits and bobs. There's even some World War II Germans lurking around in the background, John.
Of course, there always is. They're always under your bed.
Yes, very much so.
I did see what looked to be some building packs in there as well, which could be very interesting.
There are terrain bits and pieces, yes. So for when you're playing, who do you call it? Bot War and beat 'em up. Sometimes you'll need to hit people in the face with a bin or throw them into a vending machine or knock the top off a fire hydrant. All of these are infinitely doable. Goosh. Show me that.
So there's nice selection. Like, throw a car at someone's face.
Yeah, I'm limiting the cars. They're too damaging. But you can also pick up the street signs and use them like axes. I mean, it works for a little while until it goes away, and the generator is very handy as well. So interactive terrain, i.e., if you see it, you can pick somebody, or you can pick it up and club somebody with it, or smash them into it. Either is fine in that regards.
Acceptable?
Yes, I think so. The buildings are quite cute as well. If I go for the large building and then these hangar-looking things, because there are a range of cardboard buildings that they do to get people started into Bot War. So cardboard city mat / map tile, depending. You can get cardboard or there's a neoprene one if you're lucky enough to catch it in stock. And then there's also foldable cardboard terrain, including some of these sort of, what are they called? Nissen huts?
Yeah.
The big curved King's Hall looking things.
Yeah, Nissen huts.
So yes, that I really like. And not just because it looks like it's come straight out of Ghostbusters. Although, it's a brownstone building, so it's not a million miles away. And again, set in the 80s. Very 80s themed.
Mm-hmm.
Like the 80s, it's all good. But in here we have the retro robots. So one of the biggest problems people have with getting into Bot War is laying their hands on the stuff because it has to come from the Antipodes. So being able to print your own via the medium of one of those printers is probably going to be much handier. But initially what Anthony started off with was some of the original sculpts for the bots. So some of these haven't been available in a while, and now you can pick them up and then shoot people in the face. There's Black Ops. I think he's changing with 3rd edition, so that card will be changed. But you too can still shoot people in the face.
I see. It's nice that some of the stuff that's been out of production is being brought back and being able for folks to get it. So if you're just diving in now and there was something you really wanted, you can go back and get it.
Yes. Or for some people who have never seen it because it was never available.
Yes, very true.
Conrad and Switch are the Golden Lions. Are you? This is another thing he's done with especially with the Valiants, is sort of sub-factioning them because they were so expansive a set that they just sort of went on for days. It makes it life a little bit easier if they're all subdivided now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this works well with this. This works well with this. Oh, that's a cute one.
It's not even this works well. It's literally going, right, Golden Lions are now a sub-faction. All of these models are Golden Lions. Red Cannoneers are all like this. And each of those little sub-groups, like the Blue Speedsters, they all work in a similar way or have a similar theme in their sort of rules build. So when you're picking up Red Cannoneers, you know that they're a bit soupy and gun heavy compared to, trying to think who Sordana leads, White something. It'll come back to me, or it won't. Anyway, so the bots themselves, obviously there's a host of them, including things like the drones, the electro tyrants, and the big kaiju, which means you can start to, there's Sordana there, the White Knights, course they were. Why would they not? But it means you can get your hands on a variety of stompy robots to start punching people in the face without having to worry about getting them shipped in from foreign parts.
Yeah. These remind me of the mini-cons in one of the TV shows.
Yes. The reason for that, although these are distinctly different.
Yes. Of course.
Technically distinct.
Legally distinct.
That's the one. And I love Bot Wars to bits. I have quite a chunk of it. And there's some really nice bits and pieces in here. However, it's some of the other weird and wacky stuff. So for the rise of the democracy, which is the sort of the first 28mm skirmish, there's a host of interesting bits and pieces like the coils. So your evil deluxe scientists and not at all Cobra. Don't worry about it. They're really not. And then on the other hand, you've got the good guys from the democracy, Eagles veterans.
Absolutely not. G.I. Joes.
100% not. I'm glad we agree on that, John.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
G.I. knows.
And Space Cop, which has got nothing to do with Space Cop by Red Letter Media, which is a shame. Doesn't contain Rich Evans at all. However, it does contain a couple of big chunky ass bikes and people whose helmets are not a million miles away from some form of judge.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Nope.
They're just very judgmental.
Mm.
Well, they're mental. Give you that, certainly. So, 28mm and
there's some Germans for you, John.
Bot War bits and pieces. But there's also then a variety of packs as well. And these, I can't remember if he's actually got round to doing World War II adaptation for the rules yet. It's only a matter of time. I mean, the system itself is fairly robust, and it's just a case of pulling bits out or tweaking bits onto it. Nobody needs to be able to print more than one MG42, just say. Don't need that many. Leave them alone. But where it really shines for me is the vehicles, especially for the 28mm stuff, because laying your hands on the Frenchies, laying your hands on some of the vehicles for Rise of the Democracy is relatively expensive, having to get them in resin and get them shipped from Australia. So being able to come in and just actually have them printed up is a great way of doing it. I mean, the Phoenix battle car, I've got that in Bot War scale. Mm-hmm. So I've got it in 10mm, but having a 28mm one, do nothing around the place with its missiles, not at all like Mask. Can't stress that enough. I don't even know where you got that idea from.
Honestly, I'd be amazed if some of the younger generation even know what Mask is.
They don't need to.
I suppose because it's not Mask, because they don't need to. Yeah.
So as far as that's concerned, that's just a car with ground to air system and some form of radar built in, and away you go. These are interesting looking fellas. Somebody needs to fetch the Deadite Hunter from... Oh no, what have I done there? I've clicked something that I shouldn't have clicked. But yeah, fetch the Deadite Hunter from Crooked Dice to deal with the half-dead wandering space monsters.
Yep, that's pretty cool.
Because they're a whole other bundle of fun. Oh, I'm going to have to close some of these, aren't I? I've gone too far there, haven't I? Yeah. Take me back to wherever I was.
Well, there's a hell of a selection for only being up for a month or two.
There is.
I mean, I assume he digitally sculpts like nearly everything for the ranges anyway.
Yeah, these days, pretty much exclusively.
Yep.
By the medium.
For some of the older stuff, it's just a 3D scanner is all he needs, and then some tidy up.
Yes. Don't know what I hit there, but I've killed it dead. Because there's these, but then there's also fantasy miniatures are just starting to come out as well. So you've seen a few of them on the front page, which is some undead wights and skeletons are on the way. Here's the space kaiju, which are all giant killer fish monsters. It's very Sharknado.
Mm.
And then I'm looking forward to playing Beat 'em Up because I've got it sitting, but these are alternative sculpts. So the sculpts I have for these characters are different from the Kickstarter, which is nice. So it's not just, here's the model that we're selling people, here it is as an STL. That's a different versions of them. Which also means if you fancy playing some 1980s arcade action on the tabletop in something like Beat 'em Up, you can do that. He is going to shank somebody.
Yep. And again, if you want to make them more powerful on the tabletop, just paint them a different color scheme.
Yes. Well, I just painted mine different color schemes just so I can differentiate between them. So you've got guy in blue denim, guy in red denim.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that one works. And
guy
it works
in red denim has a different stat line. To be
sometimes
1980s.
Sometimes it's later on in the level where you're going to have to kill them up to all of a sudden they become much tougher. They've learned second ability. They can crouch now and punch you in the nuts. As opposed to just attempting to punch you. So I do like those. The tribes bits for this come in here. Contains choices from Bot War to the 28mm range. So you can hop in at whatever level best suits you. But there we have things like the Electro Tyrant's Drone Army. So that's a relatively new army for Bot War. I say army, relatively new set. Drone controllers are absolute filth. So now people have got the option to print as many drones as they possibly can onto the tabletop. Thankfully, there are limits to prevent super spam, but it's still not nice. I don't want to see it anywhere near me.
So is this the How to Lose Friends faction?
Well, no, there are worse ones out there, believe me.
Okay.
But the drones aren't very annoying to begin with. I do like, those are the vehicles I'm talking about there. So your Atlantean and your Red Star State, getting those as an STL file that you can print just makes life much easier than picking up things like some of the old factions or the Knights of Centaurus. So it has a touch of the He-Man meets Visionaries as far as science fiction, future fantasy, sci-fantasy, is that what they call it? Kids with their music television. So yes, fascinating to see what changes come for Bot War 3rd edition. And hopefully with the advent of this, it may encourage a few more people to give it a go and see what they think of it. Or at the very least, just paint a load of massive robots that then can go stomping up and down Main Street with a car in one hand and a stop sign in the other, clubbing people to death. Because that's always good.
With the size resin printers are getting to these days, you might be able to do a big old participation game for a convention.
Could do. You mean blow everything up?
Gigantify it and then take it to a show.
No reason why you can't. I mean, that's what resin printers are for, isn't
it? Time and money with resin, though.
That's all right. It's not taking any of my time or money. Somebody else is doing it. I stay away from those things. No good will come from them. So yes, if you do fancy checking out some interesting bots and 28mm figures, then it's worth having a look at Traders Galaxy. Then you can always see what you think of the game as well. It's a nice, simple core system that you can play around with to your heart's content. And there's even some Let's Plays of me and Shay. I was going to say fighting, but it's actually me mostly getting hit in the head with cars. Once Shay discovered just how much damage he could do lobbing them at my head, he went absolutely ham. So I won't be putting as much traffic on the tabletop next time we play. I think that's the fairest way to do things.
Or just put more on your side of the table than his?
Oh, there was plenty everywhere. I was just ignoring it because I was a good guy. Whereas he's playing a complete scumbag because he's Shay.
Property damage does not matter.
That's the one. Right. We have a couple of Kickstarters to take a look at to round out the show this week. First of which is some proper old school Warhammer 40,000 adjacent from Red Bard. So I backed one of Red Bard's previous Kickstarters up till now, been working exclusively on fantasy. But this time round, decided to dive into some classic styly Warhammer 40,000. So Rogue Trader meets second edition or that ilk. 2 sets of factions in here. We have the Space Ogres and we have the Space Frogs. So your classic Slan and Ogren. And they are relatively small. It's a modest Kickstarter. Doesn't go over the top. It's, here's my sculpts. In this case, a set of 5 Space Ogres plus, as you've seen, the Commissar and any stretch goals that get unlocked as they go through. These are 3D printed resin. Mm-hmm. I know this because I've got a boatload of the ogres from the last one. And they look absolutely adorable. And then there's the classic Slan, the Frogmen Warriors, and Frogmen Guards, 7 in each of these units, with interchangeable heads as well. So you can swap your froggies around, make them look a little bit different with their big-assed headdresses on them, as you blast your way to fun and profit just before you collapse polar gates and destroy whole planets. Terrible, terrible people. But I love what he's been doing with Red Bard, from the classic ogres and orcs and the like that are on the site, to actually branching into old school 40k, so the old Hammer community, getting your hands on things like this, sort of classic space ogres or ogren commands, has been near impossible for a long, long time, because they were never a massive range to begin with, but they were all kind of unique and interesting. And we can see here he's already unlocked his Ossifer, his Frogman thing, but still working on others, and will be at the very least you get a sketch out of him if it gets unlocked. So these are things that haven't been actually concepted or sculpted yet, till he sees where the Kickstarter goes, essentially. Mm-hmm. Using a Kickstarter like a Kickstarter should be used to fund the production of extra stuff. He'll never catch on. But if you are interested in them, like I say, I got the ogres from the previous one, and the quality was absolutely spot on. I wouldn't do that with the standard, mind you, but that's just me. I wouldn't do that with any standard, regardless of what it's made out of. But they're really nice, crisp sculpts without a lot of fussy detail on them. And then the production is 3D printed, so cleanup is just a case of buffing out the occasional, whatever you call them, join point. Might be a word for it. But yeah, I really like the Space Slan. Obviously, the Ogrins are just cracking.
Yeah, I'm loving that Ogrin officer. I really want to get my hands on one of those.
I think, is he the one that's exclusive to this? If you don't get him in this, you're not getting him. Oh no, he's okay. It's the standard.
Okay.
So yeah, you can just grab whatever you want, or you can get the whole pack. But I mean, 35 quid for 5, £7 each. That's pretty spot on. I'm trying to remember the last time I picked up an Ogrin in lead. I think he was more than that. Although he may not have been lead at that stage, he might have been into the white metal. But they just have so much adorableness in them. I just love the old school flak jackets and the old school armor and weaponry, where they did just go, let's take some ogres, right, now give him a bulletproof vest, stick a pair of shades on him and the biggest gun you can find. Now he's an ogrin. That's how it works. That's how they change from one to the other. It was normally only your bonehead sergeant who actually looked like he was in proper sci-fi gear. Otherwise, everybody else just looked like they were just walking straight off a fantasy battlefield and picked up some guns from wherever LARPer had gone past. Which is, at the same time, great. Can't really complain about that. So yeah, if you're fancying giving that a go, look, he's standing on top of some fugu Adobe buildings. And that's not why I picked this, even though there are fugu buildings there. There are...
Are we funded?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yes,
funded,
we are.
Because like I say, very modest goals. Yeah. He doesn't have huge plans for massive armies. So he generally always funds, and then he gets the stuff shipped out in a very timely fashion. When I picked up my ogres and they arrived, I think he'd actually stuck in some other things. He included a little note going, sculpted something else, maybe like a treasure chest or something. Or there was additional miniatures that I hadn't expected or paid for that had been bunged in, because it was like, yep, this went well. So I made another one and then stuck it in top. Well done, everyone.
I got bored, have more toys.
Yep. God bless him and all who's sailing him. 2 weeks left on it. If you fancy some old school, old hammer style 40k, then it's a great way of doing it. And remember, if you're playing 2nd edition, Ripper guns hit at short range automatically with 3 sustained fire dice. So why would you not? Stick them on the back of Chimera, barrel them up the field, and give somebody 30 odd dice of sustained fire in the face. Scoring 60 automatic hits, and then flick them the V's as your opponent cries. That's the way to do it.
I can only imagine how vicious Gerry was in the old days.
Oh, I was a complete shit. But I've mellowed. So, well done.
You've mellowed as your dice rolls have got worse.
They were always bad. That's why I needed to put them into short range out the back of the Chimera, where I didn't have to worry about rolling to hit. I just had to go automatic.
You suck to be you.
You missed 4th edition guard then when you couldn't put them in chimeras.
Oh, why would they do that? Oh,
made a rule called "It's dark in there," and they had to have a commissar or pass a leadership test to embark.
I remember this now.
Terrible stuff. Right, our last Kickstarter and last bit of the show is some Northern Warriors from Testudo Miniatures. So this is the second in their sort of Northern Warriors Kickstarters. The first one produced some bits and pieces for the Baltic or Northern Crusades a while ago. So there are already miniatures out there for this if you're after it. But it is essentially 3 sets of figures that you can pick up. Polish, Lithuanian, and Teutonic, which allows you to do your Northern Crusade. So if you want to get the massive Lithuanian and Polish armies and attempt to stave off the advance of the German order, then you can definitely do that with these. And they're an absolute stunning set of figures. These have been sculpted by Christian Americi. But some of the other stuff, the Teutonics, have been done by Giuseppe Rava, and anybody who knows any historic books that are coming out at the moment knows that Giuseppe is one of the best artists out there. I've got a couple kicking around that have his artwork as their front covers because he's just a legend. I didn't realize he sculpted as well, which is just insane. So for the Lithuanian, you get the Grand Duke of Lithuania, Vatuatas the Great. There's command. There's some Lithuanian knights and heavy infantry. So you can see there, relatively small amount, but you just need some multiple packs to stack up your units. Polish are something similar, where you have Vladislav II, King of Poland, alongside some standard bearers and 12 fighting knights on foot. And then the Teutonics have got a whole host of famous named scumbags. So Ulrich von Jungingen, Friedrich von Wallenrod, and Kuno von Liechtenstein, backed up by some fighting Teutonic knights and monks and standard bearer. if I go to the workbench, you can get a better look at these models because they are absolutely cracking and with a ton of character. And again, it's one of these, whenever we talk about the Crusades, the amount of times everybody just automatically goes, Crusades means Holy Land. Just drop your eyes on the map. Just go straight down there, focus. But there were so many other Crusades, whether it was the Reconquista in Spain later on, or the Northern Crusades, where people like the Teutonic Knights were carving out a massive area, not even for themselves, but themselves and the church. They just more or less went, we're going to take this off the heathens who don't deserve it because they're heathens. And that was a brutal set of crusades up north and lasted a long time as well. And these figures are absolutely spanking. I mean, the amount of detail on the knights there is just gorgeous. 28mm metals. And will do the absolute wonder job for anybody who plans on getting into the Northern Crusades. It's like those. Yeah. Let me see if I can find some of the. Here we go. Some of the actual Teutonics.
Yeah, the detail on the kit and the armor is just really, really nice.
Yeah. Big fan of these. Screaming, have at you. And it's another one of these ranges that I think has grown up because somebody has wanted to do a specific period and has looked around and discovered that while you can lay your hands on the Teutonics from a myriad of companies, trying to find representative models for the Polish and Lithuanians, much harder. At that point, you're then going, well, I guess I better do it myself. Even things like the monks, they're really nice. I find a use for them in several games, including Saga, for example.
Ding ding, reset the clock.
Look at that. So if you want to do
the shield with the little notch out of it.
Yeah.
There are just so many periods of history with so many different factions and lords and stuff running around. Like it would be hard for any one company to try and cover a tenth of it in a lot of cases. So when you see sculptors like this come along and go, here's your very specific thing, that just makes a lot of people smile, doesn't it?
Yeah. I particularly like the named famous royalty and forebears of specific things like the Teutonic orders. So these are all nailed on for the first Battle of Tannenberg in the Northern Crusades. And they're absolutely gorgeous figures. There's me before I got all my stuff cut.
Secretly, Gerry is immortal and he's been kicking around since the Crusades.
My back certainly feels like that most of the time. But yeah.
Lovely stuff.
Really nice set of figures. And like I said, this is the second campaign they've run. So there are already figures of a mounted version in there. So these are just supplementing the range that they've already started with the last one. And I mean, those are absolutely cracking. So if you fancy picking up those, you can also get them as sort of add-ons for this as well. If you want to grab any of the sets, the option is there to go and pluck out some of the famous people that they've dropped in, including Suleiman the Magnificent with his magnificent onion hat, which is everybody's favorite hat. So yes, Testudo Miniatures Northern Warriors. 23 days left, not funded yet, but it only just started. So I thought I'd get in while the iron is hot, so to speak, and let people know that it's cold up north and you should really get in there and start bringing the Lord to the heathens. It's a way to do it.
Why not?
All right. I think that wraps us up for another week. We're going to tear off, but be back on Sunday morning for the XLBS over on tabletop.com. If you want to join us then, you can. And if you're not already a cultist, you can get a 30-day trial. Otherwise, we'll see you here next Friday for more of the same. Until then, have a great week of gaming. Bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.